Hi muckers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today we are currently in Phoenix. So I'm doing a show tonight and I want it to be a little bit of a Beyonce vibe. I literally went and saw Beyonce last night again. I've now seen her twice on this Cowboy Carter tour, and then I'm seeing her again in London in a couple weeks with my mom, and I'm gonna be reunited with my mom. But I got this top last night and I love it. So this is what I'm going to be wearing at the show tonight if you're coming to Phoenix. And our walk on and walk off songs are going to be both Beyonce songs. So if anyone has any recommendations, let me know. If you're seeing this before the show, we are literally starting the show in a couple hours. But I just checked into the hotel. It took a long time to get here, by the way, from New York to where are we? Phoenix. And to get to Phoenix, it literally was like 5.5, I think even borderline 6 hours on the flight, which was crazy. So today is definitely a day of like no sleep, bus, club, another club. And we have the show and it's going to be great. I'm really excited for it. And actually the show venue that I'm performing in tonight is actually a venue that Colleen used to perform in and do Miranda Sings shows all the time. So opening joke, sorted, you know what I mean? But anyways, for today's video, I wanted to do a little dive into Def Noodles. Now, I just want to clarify, by the way, that I was getting a little bit of flack after my Dan and Phil video with people saying, don't call it a deep dive if you're not going to deep dive into it. Like, how can you do a deep dive in 20 minutes was like what I was getting. Guys, things are very surface level over on the Adam McIntyre channel. If you want something bigger, I would go somewhere else. We have a little bit of fun, we kiki, and I just, on the flights here and, you know, to all the different cities and stuff like that, I'm taking notes and I'm looking up dates and I'm looking up events. And sometimes maybe I'll get a timeline wrong. Maybe I'll get a fact wrong, whatever like that. I can acknowledge that I'm not perfect, as much as I'd like to admit. But yeah, this is not serious. Please, this is the most unserious channel of all time. And to keep it as unserious as possible, we're going to do a deep dive into Def Noodles today. Now, this is going to be one of my favorite videos that I've filmed in a long time because I think the career trajectory of Def Noodles, our sweet Dennis, is very interesting. And this is actually someone I'm going to be making a video on where I've met them multiple times. I've met Def Noodles many times. So for a little bit of context, I first met Dennis in 2023, I think it was. I went to his comedy club and they were doing a comedy club night, and him and his partner at the time, I don't know if they're still together, whatever, they were both very, very, very sweet to me and my mom. They got us good seats. They let us come backstage. And Dennis was very, very, very shy, which made sense because me and Dennis had been having a back and forth on social media for a long time. I had called him out on a lot of things I didn't agree with, and he had put me in his live shows, kind of like making fun of me at the intros and stuff like that. So we had this like back and forth, a little bit of tension, a little bit of fun, a little bit of chaos. So meeting for the first time was definitely a little bit awkward, and I, you know, was not going into awkward. I think Dennis was a lot more awkward than me, which is really funny because he's, you know, he's so much taller than me and like towers over me. But anyways, he was very nervous to meet me, but I do think that he is a very shy person in general. But that was not the first time I met him. I ended up in January of this year. I think it was January of this year. I think so. Yeah, I think it was. God, it seems so much longer. I went out to LA and filmed a bunch of podcasts. I did the Chronically Online podcast, basically just as a way of promoting the tour that I'm currently on, which is almost over, which is crazy. Thank God. Thank God it's almost over. Baby, I am not made for the touring lifestyle. And whenever I was going to be filming these podcasts, you know, I had these really exciting guests I was excited to talk to lined up. Grace Halbig, I had Lauren Gray. I was really excited to talk to Jake Weddle. I had my friend Neve. I was really excited to talk to Oscar Gracie, RCL Beauty. There's a couple other names that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. Swip, oh my God, my favorite one that I got to film, because we got to like reverse rules a little bit where I was like interviewing Swip. God, I love Swip so much. By the way, Swip came to my LA show and is the only creator in this space other than Lauren Gray, who was with my management at the time, so they probably forced her to go, but I love Lauren Gray so much. Such a sweet girl. Swip came to my LA show just to support, and it was very, very, very sweet because I know that, like, you know, Swip likes to keep to herself, and I really respect how she respects, you know, her personal life and all the rest, but she showed up to my LA show and sat in the crowd and was cheering me on and came backstage after, and just such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. That was my favorite podcast that I ever filmed. And so anyways, when I was going out to LA to film these podcasts, when I had went out to LA and met Dennis at his comedy club, he gave me a little tour of the property, and he showed me that, you know, there's a main comedy club room where the infamous comedy club things happened. And then out the back, there's, you know, podcast space. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I should reach out to Dennis. I wonder if, like, he would even accept me, you know, to film in his studios because we have such a rocky history. But I thought because we had met and broken the ice that maybe it would be fine. Yeah, it was great. I got to book his studio, and I booked in there. I was in his studio like every single day for like a week straight. And some days I was in there for multiple hours a day. I remember on the day of Swoop, I filmed with Swoop for like 2 hours, and then I filmed with Jake Weddle for 2 hours. So Dennis was hearing a lot of me because he was engineering it, and he did such a great job. And I would really, 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 if he's still doing it, recommend his podcast studio. He was professional. It was a great studio. He gave me great edits. He was live editing it. Great price as well. Yeah, and a great location for guests to go to in like peak Hollywood. I don't know if he's still doing that, but if he is, I would really recommend it. I love how those podcasts looked. So we did that, and I was seeing him every day. And obviously the first couple days it was very awkward, but kind of by the end, we weren't like casual talking to each other, but it was definitely more of like a, hey Dennis, good to see you again. Very, very, very much casual. So I would say that I have kind of analyzed Dennis a lot in person. That I kind of have a lot of thoughts with the things that I've written down as well. Def Noodles is a really interesting one. I think that he was, I would argue, the biggest news channel on YouTube for like a couple months. Now that may be controversial, but like if you were in it during the pandemic, like there was no one posting as often and as much about as Def Noodles was, which was a downfall as much as it was a positive for Dennis. It ended up being the reason that he, you know, ended up messing up a lot, but it also was, you know, he was the first one to break news stories, whether they were real or not. And, you know, in the world of fast churning media, he really aced that, and he was working a lot. So with Def Noodles, obviously his real name being Dennis, it's important to note that he was, you know, a stand-up comic, and he made sure to tell us this a lot. Very, very Gabby Hanna, you know, having to like tell you that they're an artist. You know, he was a stand-up comedian, and then, you know, started making this internet content, which was, you know, deep diving into drama and commentary, and he wore the cat ears, and it was camp, and it was, you know, it was fun. So in 2020 was whenever he really started blowing up on TikTok and YouTube, and because he was doing these, you know, daily videos, and he was doing multiple videos a day. Like no one was doing it like Dennis was during like peak 2020 when all the influencers were getting canceled every single day. Like he was on it. His content was, you know, every single video was getting over 100,000 views, sometimes more than that. He was making, I could only assume, I don't know, a lot of money as well doing this, which is probably why, you know, he ended up churning out more and more and more, obviously. But he was everywhere. And I think as well, he was a big part of Frenemies lore as well, if you think about it, the amount of times that he was like referenced. And he was referenced a lot on my channel. He was referenced a lot on other drama channels. He was referenced a lot in like mainstream news as well, because again, he was compiling deep dive threads. I just wonder like how long it took him to do all those things, if he was doing it like solely by himself or whatever, because it, you know, obviously to an audience, it looks very surface level covering drama and news, but like, even though he was covering fake stories, a lot of the times it's a lot of work to cover things. And I wonder if he did it all himself. I'm very curious about that. So anyways, again, he had the cat ears. He would be in the little Minecraft house. It was very camp, very fun at the start, which is crazy comparing it to what it has become now. Again, he became one of the biggest. I can say confidently that I think he was towering over every drama channel and commentary channel in views. And because of his quick pace as well, he garnered such a fan base so quickly, and then also had such a general public audience watching him that knew that they could get things fast from his channel, which obviously is a recipe for, you know, maximizing how many people are going to want to watch your content, because he appealed to everyone. Now, what's really interesting about this was he had like a really good year in 2020. Like he was everywhere, like I said, and he was covering everything. And like people on Hollywood Fix were like referencing him, like if he was going to cover it and stuff like that. Like Dennis was a big deal. He was a big deal in 2020. And then I would say that like the more he started posting, the more kind of he was getting called out for things, you know, being inaccurate or flat out misinformation or telling stories and making threads on stories where the person has already kind of confirmed in a comment that they were lying for clout, that kind of thing. It kind of started entering a really weird territory where Dennis would cover any story that anyone would write about an influencer. Therefore, people were coming forward with fake stories knowing that Dennis was going to cover it, and their profiles would get posted, and then they would get this boost of followers. So people started really playing Dennis, but I don't think that Dennis is dumb in any way. I think Dennis just had an approach of, okay, I get to cover a story and I get to make money off of it. I think that honestly is how Dennis came. I don't think Dennis was fooled by people. I don't think he cared to validate stories. I think the stories he was able to break as soon as possible, he was the one getting the views. He was the one breaking stories, whether they were true or false. He was the one making money. And I think that that was a big moment for it. Now, a big focus for me with Dennis, my big problem with Dennis was his coverage of the James Charles scandal, the really big scandal where it seemed that every single hour there was another underage boy, you know, speaking up against James Charles. Now, this was incredibly frustrating because this became mainstream news. 15 young boys have spoken up about James Charles. 30 young boys. 100 young, 200, like you would have believed it because Dennis had this mega thread. It was like a James Charles mega thread. I don't know if anyone remembers it, where he was like detailing the stories of every James Charles alleged victim, but he was adding every single TikTok that was ever made about James Charles in a negative light to this. And some of them were clearly sarcastic as well. And some of them were clearly trolling. And some of them were people lying and in the comments being like, I'm doing this for clout, which is disgusting, by the way, because there are people that even James Charles came forward and acknowledged that he did do this kind of stuff too. It takes away from their stories. But Dennis was getting so much attention covering, you know, James Charles in this narrative that it didn't matter to him fact-checking stories. He would just post things immediately. And the big problem with this was he had this huge mega thread, all the victims of James Charles. James Charles takes an internet break and then comes back with a video in a now deleted video, which is the video where he, you know, said that I did do this to two of the boys. I didn't validate their age. They were lying to me, whatever he said, but he confirmed that with at least two of the boys, it did happen. But in his video, he gets out of this scandal. James Charles gets out of this scandal of, you know, sending alleged nudes, you know, asking for alleged pics, all this shit, right, that we've already dived into. He was able to get out of that. And keep in mind, this was mainstream news that James Charles was doing this. He got out of it because he didn't actually reference Dennis by name, but he referenced Dennis without naming him, and everyone knew he was talking about because Def Noodles was huge, and this mega thread was huge. And he basically said how this person was covering every story and all it took was someone making a TikTok about James Charles and saying that they knew him and it would go in the thread as another victim. And what James Charles said there was true. That is exactly what Dennis was doing, which therefore meant that James was able to actually get his way out of the scandal by blaming fake news like Def Noodles. You know what I mean? He's able to acknowledge he did two of the things, but then he's able to make a bigger deal that, look how much of a victim I am. There's over 15 fake stories that, you know what I mean? So that was a big problem with Def Noodles. And I think that was when he started to lose the support of the general drama channel fan base, the people that watch my videos, Spill Sesh videos, T-Spill, Sloan, Peter Mon, Rich Lux, all these kind of people, right? I think he started to lose their support because if there's one thing all of us will come together on is a James Charles call out. You know what I mean? Because he shouldn't have a platform. We're in agreement with this. And I think Dennis giving him an out really pissed off a lot of creators and really pissed off a lot of the community. And I think that that was something very hard for him to kind of come back from. Now, also, what we need to kind of address during this time was what happened with Papa Gut. the commentary channel. So this was a huge situation with Def Noodles as well, where basically, I think, now again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is me trying to deep dive years ago shit. With majority of it has all been deleted off the internet, by the way. But from what I was able to kind of remember with going back on my old videos, I think what happened was Dennis had called Papa Gut like a pedo defender or something like that. And then Papa Gut had responded, and he was basically saying how, you know, this was like defamation. He was really, really, really upset with Dennis saying what he had said in that relation, which obviously, and, you know, everyone was rallying behind Papa Gut. What the hell is Dennis doing? This was turned into a big thing. And Dennis, instead of kind of going back on it, doubled down on it and started like mocking Papa Gut in like a lot of videos. It became like a big part of Def Noodles lore on his channel to like mock Papa Gut then. And he started like quoting Papa Gut in his like emotional video about Dennis doing this to him and using that like against Papa Gut. And it got really fucking ugly and really weird, where it was like, why is Dennis doing this? Like, he was single-handedly like targeting Papa Gut, and it was really, really, really bad. And again, Dennis started hiding behind this character. You know, I'm a character. It's satire. Nothing can be defamation if I'm not even a real person. So this started to piss everyone off, because what a cop-out, you know what I mean? If he's reporting wrong stories, well, it's just satire. If he's, you know, accusing Papa Gut of things, well, it's just satire. If he's doubling down on targeting Papa Gut, he's just a character. It's not real. So this, again, started to really anger the audience, because it was like gaslighting the audience when they would react to something and he would be like, I'm not even a real person. Obviously, that's not going to work in the long run, because he was also, you know, making these videos daily where you were getting to know him a little bit, but then he was admitting that he's nothing like the character. So this was kind of the cracks in the Def Noodles, the character, the little Minecraft kitty. This was definitely when this was starting to like, you know, go down. So yeah, the Papa Gut situation was really, really, really bad. A lot of back and forth. And now I think as well, one thing around this time that started happening was the infamous roast ? Battles. If you remember, you're owed compensation. Dennis, in that very place that I would film the podcast, in the room next to it with the, you know, the comedy space, he would host these roast battles. Now, this was whenever Dennis was severely disliked on the internet, because he had just came off the James Charles backlash, and he had just came off the Papa Gut backlash, and he was like attacking everyone. Now, like I said at the start, he had this intro video that he played during these roast battles, which were creators talking about Dennis, and they were all being like, Dennis needs to stop. What is Dennis doing? And I was included in it. I'm pretty sure a lot of Rich Lux, I'm pretty sure, was in it. He was basically like making fun of all of us for like having an issue with what he was doing. So therefore, he was losing more of the core community that he built himself up on by basically telling everyone to go fuck themselves. And so he did these roast battles, and people started showing up to them to basically make fun of Dennis. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy era. Looking back on it, he would live stream at his comedy club, and people would go to heckle him and boo him and cause a scene, knowing that it was being live streamed so that it would create a big viral moment. And looking back on it, it's so unsafe, first and foremost, that people were going there with that intention and Dennis was allowing it to happen, because that's a dangerous position to put yourself in. And it was really bad. I remember there was the one with Salvo. There might have even been multiple with Salvo Pancakes, who remembers, where Salvo went and it was this big blow up and it was all live streamed. And then in between all the chaos and the fighting and the threats and the booing and Dennis standing on stage like this, while people are booing him, he would have these people, I guess, who were his friends at the time, who would, you know, come forward and do roast battles. But not only did these people appear incredibly, like, drugged out, and I'm thinking specifically of this one girl who was like, yo, mom's pussy! Who remembers that girl? To me, she probably wasn't, but in my opinion, she came across as someone who was very drugged up. Yo, mom's pussy! How do you feel when I eat your mom out? Who remembers that girl? I'm pretty sure Dennis said to her, "You from Detroit?" Like, this era was crazy. It was crazy. Who remembers that girl? "Oh, I will eat your mom out." Silence from the crowd. Dennis, "You from Detroit?" Silence from the crowd. Not even silence. The crowd would boo. They would boo. Oh my fucking God. So he would have his friends come out and they would do these roast battles. So not only in my mind did these people appear very, very, very drugged up, specifically that one girl, but it was incredibly unrehearsed. But these people were not talented at roasting each other. So it became such a cringe watch. So people would go to Dennis's roast battles to boo the people who were roasting each other because they were so terrible. People would go to Dennis's roast night and purposely be like, "We're not going to react to anything." So Dennis and his friends would be doing a roast battle to a crowd that they wouldn't boo, they wouldn't cheer, they wouldn't laugh. It was dead silence. It was crazy, and it was all fucking live streamed. And the one with Salvo, security comes in, is dragging Salvo out. Salvo's screaming. Dennis is standing there like a little scared boy on the stage, with no doubt. And all this was, it was all clout, it was all attention, but this was like actually happening at his fucking comedy club. And it was crazy. So Def Noodles, the little Minecraft, YouTuber, has now turned into this person who is like hosting these like rager fucking almost debate stages where people are just going to fucking heckle and boo, and it was crazy. It was crazy. So this era, Dennis became so unrespected beyond words. It's crazy. And the people that were actually involved in his team at that stage ended up speaking out against him as well, and the way that he treated them and all the rest. We covered that extensively on my channel, so I don't want to summarize that because it feels disrespectful, but I did do a deep dive on that. Like, actually, in the moment, I watched interviews, I watched podcasts, like, we dived into that. I don't want to take away from anything by trying to condense that, but it was not a great, even for the people who were involved in that. It just seemed that Dennis had no idea what he was doing, but he lost control of the public at this stage, and it seemed like he was spiraling, and he was doing these live events every day, and then manic on YouTube. It was just not good. And then Keemstar comes into this, because, I think, again, this is literally me having to go through videos because a lot of this media has been genuinely fucking removed from online. I'm pretty sure Dennis tried to sue or come after Keemstar for, like, defamation, because Keemstar had implied that there were, if I remember correctly, like, victims of Def Noodles, the same way that Dennis was implying there were victims of James when there weren't at the time he was reporting it. Keemstar was trying to make a point that if he can do it to Dennis, and it's not okay, why is Dennis allowed to do it to other creators? Which, again, his messaging wasn't the greatest, but the point was there. And I always did see the point in what he was saying, but it just was not great how Keemstar went about it, obviously. And again, this is just incredibly hypocritical that Dennis would be pissed at this, considering the full him and Papa Gut situation. So around this time was when Dennis's socials started to, like, absolutely plummet. Like, the roast battles, the James thing took a hit. The roast battles took a hit. But whenever he started going after Papa Gut and Keemstar, people were just tuned out and people were unsubscribing. He was losing viewers like crazy, subscribers like crazy, and his videos were averaging, like, terrible, terrible views. And then I would say that in the years following, Dennis started really just attacking, like, creators. He started really coming after people, even people that he was really close with in the past, had collaborated with. And I'm pretty sure as well that I find this online, that his TikTok account was banned temporarily for harassment. And also a bunch of his tweets ended up getting, like, reported for being completely misleading. And you would literally have, like, the D'Amelios, I think, like, literally having to, like, address his, like, false tweets. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy time period. So then we kind of turned to Dennis uploading more kind of, like, angry content. He completely scrapped the character, and he was kind of just standing with a mic in the room of his, studio, and just kind of ranting, and he appeared very unstable and very aggressive, and the content was no longer what people had subscribed for, so then he lost basically his entire audience. And also at this time, people were, even myself included, he was doing a lot of really inappropriate and wrong things, but people were like, we hope he's okay. We hope, like, mental health is very important here. As crazy as he is, like, we hope he's doing okay. So he kind of took a step back, and that kind of leads us to Dennis now, which is kind of my last point that I have here, which is this really interesting kind of career change he's made. And I don't know if anyone else has picked up on it, but not only did Dennis start fully doing AI videos, AI slop, by the way, where he literally recorded himself and then he would use that footage with the mouth and facial expressions moving by AI to make like 10, 20, 30 other videos. And so he was posting these, and obviously his audience that watched him for drama were gone anyways, but then the people that gave him a second chance were like, you're not even recording these. This is fucking you, but AI. So then he lost them all. So, after that, Dennis takes a couple weeks off, I would say. And then Dennis comes back to the internet, and his entire content now is very, in my opinion, very right-wing. And he's still, he's like went back to the Def Noodles character from like 2020. But now he's not making videos on like Charlie D'Amelio. He's making like videos that are very right-leaning, right-wing, very much so. I mean, he had made a couple videos very talking about Trump. He's very against woke culture now, whatever. And so this is kind of his new content. And also, ironically, Dennis was the person who canceled people. Dennis was the one that would break the stories with Def Noodles, but now he's the person that talks about woke culture being too far and cancel culture going too far. And I'm like, bitch, show me how much money you made from cancel culture. Immediately. Like, it was crazy to me. His content now is exactly the opposite of what he started as, which is so interesting. His content now is definitely like the titles are less so James Charles does this and more so like the evil left or the crazy woke or what. And I'm like, and you know what's even crazier? When I filmed my podcast and he was in the room with the headphones on having to listen to it, me and my friend Neve were talking about gay sex, lesbian sex, orgies, threesomes, like queer people. Like, I'm like, oh, this little right-wing boy had to sit through all that. I got my Roman's revenge in the end. Now, that's really the like last points I have. There was big subreddits about Dennis. Twitter really comes for him all the time. But more so than that, you'll always have people against you. I just find Dennis really interesting. He was the it person in covering digital culture. And then I think his own ego, and maybe some other factors as well, caused him to just turn feral. And then he lived off of the negative attention. And he seemed to really enjoy the negativity, which is why he did these in-person shows where he would be heckled. And then he would go and make videos about how that makes him feel. And then he would do more of them. And then, he leaves. Then he comes back with, all these videos coming at people like really nasty, unlike him from what we know. And then takes time off. And then is this new right-wing pivot against cancel culture, against woke culture. And I'm like, bitch, you were woke culture. You were cancel culture. Oh, I don't know. I think Dennis is one of the most interesting people that I've like had to observe online. And the fact that I've met him at least 10 times now is just makes this more fascinating to me. I would love to know your guys' opinion of Dennis between the AI slop and the fucking right-wing media. Ooh, I'm like the Wendy Williams, like burping. Ooh. Let me know your thoughts. I would love to talk to you down below about it. I will see you in my next one. I'm going to go get ready for a show, and goodbye.